Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're not feeling too sleepy after the wonderful lunch. Thank you to our panelists. Please do sit down. Um, Thanks to Yamini and the team for inviting me here to be part of the discussion today. And I'm delighted to welcome this panel here, which will be talking about art at BIL, which is at the terminal. We have a couple of works which are at the terminal. One is in the parking lot. The other is at the boulevard, which is on a wall. And the rest of them, which are inside the Taj Hotel at the airport. But one can access it. I think you can just walk through and look at it. The special thing about our panel is that it's a fairly large one, the largest today, and we've been told that we're very short on time, so we'll have to be really quick. So excuse us if we speak very fast at some point. So most of our artists have worked around the thematic of tree. In a broad sense, it's an essential component of biodiversity, which impacts our environment and communities, and it's rich in its symbolic and metaphorical significance and meanings. To contextualize the conversation and the art from the Karnataka perspective, very briefly, about 60% of the Western Ghats is present in our state, where about 20% of the state's geographic area is covered by forests. In turn, these forests support 25% of the elephant population and 20% of the tiger population of India. And the reason I mention this is also because you'll be seeing some of these motifs in the parking lot. In fact, the mountains of the Western Ghats in the western part of the Karnataka state are considered to be a biodiversity hotspot, and 2 subclusters are on a tentative list of sites that could be designated as World Heritage Site by UNESCO. Now, having this thematic represented through art at BIL forms an important subtext to the art, highlighting biodiversity of the region, and we will now see how these elements and motifs and the various components of the ecological landscape have been integrated and represented in the art. It's also interesting for me to see how many of these installations are informed by science and math, geometry in particular, and at the same time they explore notions of collective consciousness, innate intelligence, evolutionary design, and natural order and architecture. So let's begin with each of the artists from them. About themselves, if you could briefly introduce yourself a little bit, very briefly. The time remains 3 minutes each. And the conceptual premise and perhaps the philosophical anchoring of the work. And if time permits, we will have another round of question. That depends. Yeah. Ankan, perhaps we could start from you.
Hi, thank you for having me. I work as a landscape architect and an artist, and I work specifically with the folding technique. This particular work, I have done work like this before, and they were primarily, the work is informed by 2 Japanese words. One word is komorebi. Komorebi is light that filters through leaves when you look up into the canopy of trees. And there is no, this is one word in Japanese, so there is no equivalent in any other language for this kind of feeling that you get when you see that dappled light come through. And the other word is Shinrin Yoku, which again translated roughly into English means forest bathing. And people who live in very busy Japanese cities, they often in the weekends, they just take a road trip to the nearest forest and they engage in this activity called forest bathing. So in particular, they have a fascination for bamboo forests. Incidentally, there is a beautiful thicket of Dendrocalamus strictus just behind the BIC campus. If you haven't seen, you should see. It's very beautiful bamboo grove is there. So these 2 words kind of create that work where light comes through the paper, and that's a technique that I have been working on for quite a while. To that, I added this another Japanese word called Morino Oto, which means, again, roughly translated means forest sounds. So this work actually talks about the sounds that you experience when you go into the forest. You know, the rustling of leaves, the crackling of the dry undergrowth under your foot when you walk, rain if it is raining, the whistling of wind through the leaves, all of that. I took a 2-minute piece, I mapped it as a series of frequencies that kind of informed these shapes. So it's come from a little bit of a kind of a graphic mapping of that language. And of course, you can see that, you know, the feeling of sunlight kind of dappling through the leaves. So that essentially is a quick summary of the work. I'm sorry if I went over 3 minutes.
No, you're doing well. Thank you. Dhara, would you just talk a bit about your work?
Sure. Yeah. Hi. Thank you, Nalini, for the panel today. So, my work draws life from the ideas of clusters and networks in nature and the phenomena of how things organize themselves, how a cell knows exactly what it is to become, and how millions of moving parts come together, function as one, as seen in termite mounds, anthills, beehives, and other similar instances. Now, observing these patterns of self-organization can be a very systematic endeavor, and therefore that brings my practice at the intersection of art and science. And I look into the ecology of landscapes. And for this particular installation put together for the BIAL Art project, it's an iteration of a series I did in 2013. And it is, it sort of assembles a cluster of dragonflies and damselflies together as a metaphor in sort of a quintessential deliverance they symbolize. So there's a beautiful Oriental philosophy about the dragonfly. They are associated with the wisdom of resilience and adaptability. So they're born in water, they move to the land and eventually fly into the sky. So earth, water, sky, they cover 3 different paradigms in their own seemingly short span of lifetime. So that is the wisdom of going past self-created limitations, crossing thresholds, rebuilding self or becoming something of the next level. And scientifically also, the evolution biologists confirm the dragonfly is the only living creature that has retained its anatomy exactly the same as it was in its Jurassic era. So over thousands of years of evolution, there has, unlike any other species which have either gotten extinct or changed their physical form entirely, dragonfly has remained exactly the same. And that's just sort of a scientific confirmation of the wisdom of resilience and philosophy. So those were some ideas I was dabbling with this particular installation at that time when I was working on the series. How this beautiful, extremely delicate, fragile, transparent winged creature is so much more and so much more preciousness to its existence. So in this installation, the form that it takes, it's a asymmetrical cluster of damselflies put together in sort of celebrating the aesthetics of randomness, or at least what meets the eye to us as randomness, just because we don't understand it yet enough, but evokes a sense of beauty nonetheless, a sense of wonder and awe as the Visamaya Rasa. Thank you.
Kalyan, would you?
Hi everyone. You just used up all the interesting words I was planning to speak about. Okay, so let me take the plan B. It's all about cutting vegetables. There's so much geometry and there's so much you can learn with the mundane things in life. Whether you're playing with an elastic band, you're playing with toothpicks stuck on a beetroot, or everyday geometry basically. And yes, for me it's a interesting series of accidents as I start learning the fascinating aspects of geometry. You see it from the atomic level to the universe. You see it in every dimension, not just the third dimension. So this particular sculpture is titled Efflorescence, literally meaning the unfolding of a flower. But it also has a connotation about fulfillment. What do we reach eventually to? So there is a random looking element to it, that whimsical plant-like DNA behind this design. Nonetheless, I can assure you there is a very rigorous mathematical parametric principle that's given me this form. And when I say parametric, it's not really heavy on geek or tech. Pardon me, but you might start laughing. I've used a beetroot, cut them into a polyhedron, and stamped them on a piece of paper. So you get these interesting patterns that roll on your two-dimensional canvas. So to me, as an extension from that thought, the sculpture you see here are actually multi-layered, which you will appreciate. If there is a Bangalore Bandh, you can stop on that road. And until then, you can't. So it is multi-layered, and it is more three-dimensional than what it looks in this picture. So think of a beetroot as cut as a polyhedron, and rolling on a piece of paper, it leaves these impressions, the artifacts on 2D. Now, scale up to the fourth dimension. If I have a fourth dimensional entity that is leaving an imprint on our three-dimensional canvas, this is what you would get. So I saw these parallels between the patterns in biomimicry and how plants grow and how flowers grow. Flowers aren't beautiful for our eyes. I think they're beautiful because they follow an order. So this is the basic underlining principle by which I work on my sculptures. Thank you.
So Kalyan, I know you have simplified it by saying that you used a beetroot, which you did use actually. But there's a lot more to your art, and because we've worked together in the past, so I know your work around biomimicry and also around fractals and tessellations, and the order of repetition, the order in nature itself. So that is something which I find in your work and Dhara's, and also Ankan. So perhaps we can address that in the next round if there's one, and you can quickly mention a little bit more about that, the three of you. We then come to Gopinath. Gopi, yours is the lotus pond. Please tell us about that.
Yeah, I'm Gopinath. I'm living in Bangalore since almost like 25 years. I've been practicing here. This is the work I've done in porcelain. All the leaves are made in porcelain, and the copper I used as a stem, and there's a teak wood and other material I've used, and I also used paint on that. The copper I use it so that it can be very flexible, like it's kind of like even there's a slight wind, you can see that old sculpture moving around. So I wanted that kind of very delicate or a kind of movement to be in that work. Otherwise, most of my works are all like, it's a quite solid and it's a quite large sculpture. Probably this is the only sculpture which I have tried to bring, the softness in that work. That is one. And the porcelain, like usually in my ceramic works, I don't use any glaze or any color, nothing, any of my ceramic works. I just use clay, and if necessary, I use oxide for the drawing purpose. And since this was a porcelain, like I just used just the clay, no glaze, nothing, and I favored it that, and I've got that fine translucent effect in that. Thank you.
Yeah, in fact, it feels very light actually when you look at it, and light literally passes through it. So when you say translucent,
it's a kind of translucent,
if it was lit from the underneath of it, the under part of it, it would really come through the leaves, the lotus leaves. So there is a lightness of being in that sculpture for sure, and there is a kinetic element to it, which I will come to you in the second round.
Yeah.
So then we move to Madhu. Madhu, you've done the Roots of Time, the banyan tree. It's a fascinating work. If we could have that. Some glitch there. Why don't we come back to you? While in the meantime, we could speak to Kalakara. Your work is different from the others because you've worked in the parking lot. It's a mural, so why don't you tell us about that?
So the concept of the hanging ceiling garden you see on Terminal 2, it is bells. So Yamini got in touch with me asking if you can incorporate that as a mural on the corrugated surface, which you can see the barricades. So that's how we thought of, incorporating the bells, and inside that having different theme different elements of Bangalore and Karnataka in particular. And we wanted it to be vibrant because the barricading is already very, very vibrant blue. So the entire artwork needs to be very vibrant. That's how we came up with the challenge here was that the barricade is like a paper fan. It's not a straight surface. It is a corrugated surface.
Yeah.
So it's much more area than we see here because we consider the intrusions.
Right.
So that was the main challenge of execution. So we had to digitally design the artwork and then execute it. So it was like a very big, it was like a 300 feet wide barricade with a 12 feet height. So we made digital sketch of the design and then we draw grids on this barricades. And then there were like instances the grids was not coming properly because it is all corrugated surface. Even if we follow the grids, we had a printout, we had grids on the barricades. When we follow the grids on the barricade, it was not coming properly, unlike on a plain surface. So that was the main challenge. So we came back and we took photographs. Then we multiplied digitally we multiplied the images on to the barricade photographs to see where we need to correct it. So that was the main challenge. And it took us 30 days, but then trust me, it was very nice. When the work is challenging for a muralist like us, it's very interesting.
Yeah, you do a lot of work actually around murals, and you've done more than 100 is what you were telling me. More than 100 murals in public spaces?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we are predominantly a mural art team. Mural, we do graffiti. We are a team of 4 unfortunate engineers turned artists. So,
Very fortunate.
Yeah, that's about it.
Right. Okay. So, but could we have Madhu's art? The banyan tree? Yeah. Rani Rekha, would you... So Rani's work is also a little bit different because it's paintings, and she's going to tell us more about that.
Thank you. Theme is trees of Karnataka, and I'm born and brought up with trees. What I saw in my life, nature, whatever. We don't have any village or anything as a native. So being a urban person, I saw the trees in the city. And the thing was like I was told to do in a miniature style. So that was very challenging. And there were many stories behind Bangalore scenes, the places of Bangalore. I called it as monuments of Karnataka. I chose all the urban landscapes and I tried to introduce in a miniature style. And one of the work was Mysore Palace. Like I have taken Vidhan Sauda, museums, Belur, Mysore Palace.
Flyovers and
yeah, I've taken
pretty much the urban landscape.
Urban landscapes.
That you saw.
And I've taken Kingfisher Tower also. And even Chitrikala Parishad as a landscape. So it was very difficult, sometimes to manipulate with a miniature style is not so easy. So though it looks very simple, it's a very intricate and delicate thing. So I really enjoyed playing with the modern elements, with the traditional motifs like trees and other things. So Yamini was so sweet and she never had any kind of boundaries, and I was really happy doing it.
There were 24 paintings in all, which you've done
24
actually.
places of Karnataka.
So, there are a lot of parallels between your work and the mural, the graffiti that Kalakara has done, because they've also chosen icons of Karnataka as places to celebrate. Essentially, it's celebration of Karnataka, and so have you. These are iconic places that you've chosen, but at the same time, you're looking at it through the foliage. I know it's called through the inner journey through the inner eyes.
I have narrations for all the 24 panels. So when you listen to my narrations and then see my work, it will be very different. For example, I have done Mysore Palace. One of my friend, she wanted to see and she expected something like a very good architectural drawing between trees of miniatures, but I have done night scene of Mysore Palace where I have only used dots as a lights of Mysore Palace, and which was that was my dream always, seeing Mysore Palace in the night. So I have taken all the landscapes in my perception.
Right. Yeah. So Badhu, we'll anyways go ahead and you can just talk a little bit about your work. It's a 65 feet tall digital work around a very traditional, artifact, natural artifact. So I'll let you describe it, and then we can go to some more questions.
Yes. So I'm Madhu Chandrika, and my style of work is it's dictated by the space. First, my work is material agnostic. I use the materials based on the artwork that I come up with. So this particular space, when I was told about it by Yamini, the brief was that this is an atrium. It is, there is 6 floors that look down from that atrium, and there is a full glass facade in front of the atrium. So there's a lot of light which is coming into the space. And then I was told that the theme for Taj is trees. So when I imagined this, the first thing that came to my mind is something which needs to cover the entire wall space that is available. Use the light that is going to filter in through that space, and have something which can be a little more kinetic rather than static, but something which is not something which is large but not necessarily gigantic in the way that it is made, something which needs to come together with a lot of small parts coming together to create. So, and from every floor to be able to get a different view and to get a different experience with the artwork. So the big banyan tree in Bangalore is what I took as the inspiration. The big banyan tree is, it covers almost about 3 acres, and it is around 400 plus years old. So the artwork what I have created is on acrylic. The base I have used is acrylic, but I have mirrored the acrylic such that the light which falls on it reflects. So it almost feels like the dappled sunlight flowing through the tree, the leaves of the tree. And the story here is about the roots of time. And it's an ode to the big banyan tree. It's a kinetic ode to the big banyan tree. Why roots of time? Here again, the big banyan tree has been there for so long, and there are so many stories, so many human emotions that have happened, taken place around, and the banyan tree has been a spectator too. So the tiny pieces are the million stories that it holds within itself. And the tiny pieces come together. There are 3 layers that you see in the artwork. So there are more than almost around 45,000 pieces which have been put together.
Right.
So, yes.
Yeah. So we'll, if there's time, we'll come back to you. But before that, so Kalyan, I wanted to know a little bit more about tessellation in your work. And Ankan, in your work also, I find it's origami and kirigami tessellation which occurs. So would you both just, talk a bit about that? Please go ahead.
Yes.
And explain tessellation.
Tessellation. Okay. Basically, tessellation is an extension of tiling. The way you would tile a floor with square tiles, or you could do it with triangles, certain type of triangles. If you extend the same idea to 3-dimensional space, we are talking about tessellation and space filling frames. How would you fill a void with a geometry that repeats itself? So these are the interesting discoveries and ideas that as an artist I do. So, you know, it is the boundary between what we can design as humans and what nature has already done. So the typical example being a beehive, why hexagons? And what after hexagons? Hexagons are okay for two-dimensional tiling. What happens in the third dimension? There are something called Kelvin's foam. And these are basically, if you delve into it, there's a lot of geometry and mathematics. It seems a little scary to me in the initial stages, but the minute you go tactile, you know, I always like to break down whatever complex abstract ideas I want to think about into a very tactile, childlike, playful interpretation of these things. So this is, yes, tessellation, but also there's a lot of fractals. A fractal is basically something that can repeat itself, but at the same time repeating the order, changing the form. Very much like what happens when a tree grows. You see fractals in rock formation, you see fractals in clouds or the coastline. If I showed you a picture of a cloud with no other reference, you won't know how close up or how far out it's been snapped from. Unless, let us say, you see an aircraft there, and then you say, okay, that's the scale of the cloud. So that's the nature of fractal. And fractal is very much what I would like to say, the texture of the universe. Universe is made up of pixels which are actually fractals.
It's a natural repetition and the
Yes.
order of the pattern which
Yes.
exists and continues to repeat itself. So Ankan, would you like to add to that? Because yours is also around a similar theme, but the way you use the material is different.
So the technique is often quite repetitive, meaning that once you've understood a pattern, then you are going on repeating the pattern. To somebody who's not doing it from outside, it can feel very boring and repetitive. It's can feel very banal that you are, you know, sitting and just doing that same thing again and again. We can parametricize this. Again, the word parameter means to put in some kinds of things where you can change it, dynamic. So the geometry itself can also change. But alluding particularly to this work, I wanted to bring in that idea of the repetition, because to me, when I came to folding and I started doing it, by nature I am a little restless, you know, kind of guy, and I get very agitated if I get bored, you know, with nothing to do, and also very fidgety sort of thing.
And it's all hand folding. Sorry to interrupt.
This
It's
is all
hand
hand folding.
I think
This
that's
is-
important as well.
So when I came to this, I over time, as I started doing this more, I gained a lot of calm, and I felt and I saw parallels in people, you know, sitting and turning beads in their hands or repeating a prayer sort of thing. So it became that to me, you know, the folding of the paper with the repetitive creasing pattern became like that. And so the inward journey starts from this very outward action. And that calmness, then I feel that in particular this work and the way where it is located, I felt that, you know, somebody comes into a hotel, this is a lobby where they check in or something. They've reached their destination, now they know they'll get a hotel room and everything. So they get that feeling of having arrived at the, you know, place where they wanted to arrive. So that feeling of calm or feeling of happiness that yes, now, you know, that I felt was the energy that should come. And I felt that my internal energy of experiencing calm when I fold should come through in this work.
Right.
The other small thing, which I'm sorry, I'm just extending this because it's important to this work, and it again references the bamboo, which I talked about earlier, that in the bamboo grove, bamboo is actually grass, it isn't a tree. It's the ambition of the grass to grow tall, you know. And when I came to paper folding as an architect, I also felt that people were making very small, little things with paper, you know, tabletop sculptures and things like that. And I wanted to say or talk to the paper and say that, you know, you can also become very large things why aren't you doing that? And that was sort of the push or the dialogue that started happening with paper, which got me to that point where the first 20-meter long paper installation happened. And now I've made installations in biennales abroad where 120-meter long, very, very immersive kind of paper installation. So where the bamboo gets cut, bamboo grows again. If you cut the tree from the base, it's very difficult for many trees to, again, regain this thing. So that feeling of the regeneration, the feeling of a humble grass becoming so ambitious as to try to reach the sky, those were kind of very important themes for me in this work as well.
Right. So in terms of permanence, here you've used polypropylene, but normally you do work with paper, the kind of sculptures and the installations I've seen earlier.
Incidentally, I started working with bamboo paper.
Bamboo paper also.
Yes.
Okay, that's a great coincidence. I think we look forward to that. Dhara, will come to you. The dragonflies that you have represented here and the sense of chaos which exists and the randomness. Apart from that, there is an iridescence to it and there is a color. And I know you mentioned something about damselflies, which is very interesting. Do you want to expand a little bit about that?
Sure. So yes, color becomes very important. Again, as part of the nature, there's something called structural color. So most of the iridescent, amazingly bright colors that we see, they aren't really pigments, they are structural colors. So basically the light, the way it falls, the structures are at micro levels designed in such a way, naturally positioned in such ways that when light falls on it, it reflects back iridescent. So that's a beautiful scientific phenomena, and it is very evident in dragonfly wings, especially the damselfly. So basically dragonflies and damselflies are the same species. Damselflies are just more colorful cousins of dragonflies. So yeah, which is why the whole idea of color becomes a very important aspect of this installation. And in light, when there's natural light falling on this installation, there is a certain pigments have been used as part of the installation which reflect in light in such ways that you will see iridescent multiple colors. So yeah, that just kind of luckily got added to the whole idea of this installation.
Right,
yes.
It made it so much more interesting, and we saw the same thing in Madhu's work where again when the light was falling, because of the way the suspension was done for each of these smaller units, that they seem to sparkle. And yeah, that was very special. But yeah.
So there is a layer of sparkle. So
Okay.
there's a layer of mirror at the back. And in the front, where the image comes together, there is a layer of sparkle as well.
Right.
So it catches the light and there's a glint on it.
Yeah. So we'll go to Rani Rekha now because I think at that time we were not able to see the pictures. So if we could see her paintings here. Most of us, we actually know Rani Rekha as a contemporary artist because thematically the work she's been doing has been a little bit different from this. But she is an 11th generation artist, traditional artist. Her family has been traditional painters for a very long time. Would you like to expand on that? I think it would be an interesting story about miniatures, you know.
Yeah, I was like thinking of them when I was doing this because when I was told to do in a miniature style, like there was I kept a boundary so where that it should look like a miniature. So where my ancestors never had any kind of concept of making a stylish style of a painting or something. Whatever they painted, we name it now. So my grandfather was a court painter, where you see the precision in Mysore Palace. Our generations come from Vijayanagara Kingdom. So in the time of Vijayanagara Kingdom, Hampi and Lepakshi. So Virupaksha temple and Hampi, both are the murals were done by my ancestors. And after the fall of Vijayanagara Kingdom, there were no patronage. So half of them came to Mysore and half of them went to Tamil Nadu. So here Tipu Sultan was there, and in Darya Daulat Palace, we can see my grandfather's father paintings, which is, I have some drawings where he used to do a certain kind of, like this kind of miniature format paintings, and then he would do it on the wall as a mural. And my grandfather used to sketch as a photography when procession was going, and he used to capture them as a landscapes on the spot, and that would be a key sketch for him for the main. So I was remembering them when I was doing it. So
And you've used elements of Mysore painting in
yes,
this?
I have used it here. We can't make out. I have used gesso and gold, gold foils as a frames of window where you can see the picture of places in Karnataka. So it's like a illusionistic narration. So though there are 24 where some more are more.
At the same time, it has elements of Rajasthani miniature painting.
yes,
which
I have,
so this is a true amalgamation which has happened
Yeah.
here.
I've consciously taken trees of Rajasthani
Rajasthani style,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. So coming to Gopi, that may be the last question. Let's see. You've used porcelain, which is a very traditionally, we perceive it as a very fragile and a delicate material. So do you want to expand a little bit about that and how it moves, you know, the kinetic part of it? I found that fascinating as well.
I said, like most of my works are in large stone sculptures, metal and fiberglass. These, like, I had a chance to work in Claire Gime Museum in Korea. That's when I started using porcelain there. I went there to work in stoneware, but that was the first time I got a chance to work in porcelain, which I found it very interesting because, you know, like I could make it as thin as possible, but still it was strong.
Yeah.
Like if I say, like if that sculpture, old sculpture, which I moved from my studio to here without much packing. Just one bubble wrap was there with a box, and we just came and installed it. Not even one piece was damaged.
And we tried to
that
shake
kind
it yesterday, and
So
it
the
didn't
whole
break.
idea was like, whenever there is a wind, you can see that old sculpture keeps moving slightly.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know,
Yeah.
that
It
was
needs to have some air over it, I think, you know, and it would
I wish,
move,
but it's air conditioned thing.
Yamini is listening probably, so that could happen.
So, and also the whole idea was like to see, like if you see there's so much kind of complex you feel, but still there's a kind of calmness.
Right.
When you see from the top view, there's a kind of calmness, but when you come down, you feel that there's a certain complex in that sculpture.
Right.
So that was an interesting element which I tried to bring in that sculpture.
Yeah, and these are 3 feet tall, the copper wires over which the leaves are suspended,
Yeah,
and
each,
they seem to
each
float
yeah.
around.
Right, yeah.
Makes it look very nice. Last question, definitely, Kalakar. Are you Vishnu or Shri? I'm so sorry to ask you that.
I am
now.
Vishnu.
Vishnu, right. So Vishnu, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you chose the imagery, you know, the icons that you've chosen here? What went behind that?
So the idea was to have themes inside the bell. So Yamini ma'am has suggested that, you know, you can go with the themes which revolve around Bangalore and also Karnataka. So we choose elements that can fit inside a bell, found images from internet, you know, we made it as an illustration. So we choose monuments, we choose heritage sites, certain elements, birds of Bangalore, animals of Bangalore, etc. That's how we created the design. And then there were like 15 bigger bells and around 38 small bells as a background, along with the pattern that is flowing, which is inspired from the airport logo that is there.
Right. So anybody wants to talk about the scale? I think because for you the scale was a challenge, I'm sure. This is the first time that you worked on that scale. Do we have 2 minutes? Okay, last.
Okay.
Kalyan, you have to be quick.
Yes. I'd like to begin with one analogy. I wish every project had this ecosystem where the project people are like the sun with all the ultraviolet light, and Yamini and team were my and every artist's ozone layer. You gave us enough heat to get the job done, but never killed us. Thank you for that.
That's a lovely, lovely thought, actually.
So since most of my works are project based and I have to deal with engineers and project managers, I totally appreciate what Yamini ji and Bhargavi stood for. Thank you. Okay, talking about scale, this is about 140 feet long and it's on a wall of 30 feet high. Very interesting. It is pretty much hands-on, although I don't do the welding by myself. You have to lift and align these huge pieces. The biggest flower is about 12 feet tall and the smallest is hardly 6 inches. And that's the basic nature of fractal geometry that I'm shown here. And they're not random. They may seem to be a little random, but that's the whimsical nature of plants that I want to bring about. The fact that they're actually connected in a very rhythmic geometrical pattern. Installing it needed cranes and I needed quite a few of my workforce to do it. I was on the scaffolding myself as well. That's just before the Prime Minister went on that road, so they brought me down in a hurry. So it was very interesting and very challenging.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Do you think we could take a question? No, no, we can't. So that's it. We're done. Did it in 42 minutes, I think. So I'm very proud of myself. The Garva Rasa here. Thank you, everyone.